Hi grade 10s! So in this video we will be talking about the carbon cycle and the nitrogen cycle. So starting with the carbon cycle, what is carbon? Carbon is an element. It is the basis of life on Earth. It is found in rocks, oceans, the atmosphere, and all living organisms. So the same carbon atoms are used repeatedly on Earth. They cycle between the Earth and the atmosphere. So plants pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Using sunlight, in combination with the carbon dioxide, they make glucose, or sugar. This process is called photosynthesis. The carbon can be used by the plant for food or used to help build the plant in the form of cellulose. So a brief overview of photosynthesis. So down at the bottom, there's a simplified version of what's going on. So the plant takes carbon in the form of 6 carbon dioxide molecules, that enter through the leaves, plus water, 6 water molecules that come in through the roots, plus energy from the sun is used to create 1 molecule of sugar, which the plant uses for food, and the plant also releases 6 molecules of oxygen. So consumers. When organisms eat plants and other animals, they take in the carbon and some form of it becomes a part of their own body. They generate carbon dioxide from cellular respiration, in addition to the breakdown of glucose, and exhale carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So please don't get overwhelmed. You do not need to memorize all of this, but just some basics. So cellular respiration happens in the mitochondria. So we take in glucose and oxygen, and then we lose some energy over here, and we lose some water and some carbon dioxide. So cellular respiration, we take sugar, plus oxygen, and then we lose, when we breathe out, carbon dioxide and water. And we also lose energy, which you don't need to know, but is in the form of ATP. Okay. So decomposers. So when plants and animals die, most of their body is decomposed and carbon atoms are returned to the atmosphere, as decomposers also engage in cellular respiration. Some are not decomposed fully and end up as deposits underground. So this is how we end up with oil deposits. So in the case of Alberta, there used to be a giant coral reef that covered a good part of Alberta, and so a lot of that wasn't decomposed. So over time, it turned into the oil sands, and now we burn those fossils as fossil fuels. Carbon in rocks and underground deposits is released very slowly back into the atmosphere. This process takes many years. Carbon in the oceans. Additional carbon is stored in the oceans. Carbon dioxide passes into the water from the atmosphere. Plants and phytoplankton use this carbon dioxide for photosynthesis. Many animals pull carbon from the water to use in their shells. Animals die and carbon substances are deposited at the bottom of the ocean. The oceans are Earth's largest carbon storage holders, also known as a carbon sink, which we will talk about a little bit more in the next video. Burning wood and fossil fuels releases carbon compounds into the air, water, and soil. And 1 gallon of gas burned in a car releases 19 pounds of carbon dioxide. And then the cycle repeats over and over and over. So to summarize, so we have over here plants, they take in oxygen and they release carbon dioxide into the water. So plants take in carbon dioxide, they release oxygen. Carbon dioxide gets dissolved in water and can become the shells of marine organisms and can become coal and natural gas and oil. And then combustion and respiration releases carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. So the nitrogen cycle. So we're not going to go into a lot of detail about the nitrogen cycle. This is kind of just act as like a very brief overview. So nitrogen is the most plentiful element in Earth's atmosphere. All living things require nitrogen to live. Plants and animals are not able to utilize this free nitrogen that is floating around in the atmosphere. And plants rely on nitrogen-fixing bacteria in order to get nitrogen. So you can see here, there are these little tubules in the root of this legume plant. It's probably, I don't know, probably like a pea or a soybean plant. And so there's little tiny bacteria that live in there, and they trap and convert atmospheric nitrogen into stuff that the plant can then use. It's kind of neat. The other one is blue-green algae, which can cause a whole lot of problems, which we will talk about tomorrow. Oh, too far. Okay, so very briefly. So atmospheric nitrogen is taken in by plants, and then it goes through a bunch of processes, and sorry, this chart isn't very clear. Okay, so back to this photo. Oh, okay. So back over here, so then this plant would then get eaten by something else. So, I don't know, let's say a person. And then, so this person, their waste would get eventually released back into the atmosphere, and then that, goes through these processes, and it eventually becomes atmospheric nitrogen again, and then the cycle is reproduced. So important to note is that especially in the agriculture industry, it's important to note that these special legume plants and the special relationship they have with the nitrogen-fixing bacteria is super important, because without these special crops, humans have to rely on man-made fertilizers in order to grow nice, big, high-yielding crops, and then that can run off into waterways, and then that creates problems, things like this, like this blue-green algae bloom over here. So some questions for you to answer. So how do humans affect the carbon cycle? How do humans affect the nitrogen cycle? And what is the difference between photosynthesis and respiration?